Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about the gray and white matter of the spinal cord. So let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Now, when we're talking gray and white matter of the spinal cord, the first thing we want to identify is which is which. And the gray is a reference to just being the darker area, and the white's a reference to being the lighter colored area. They're certainly not gray, they're certainly not white. It's more of a reference to the dark or the light. If you're looking at the diagram, the computer generated diagram, or the actual x-ray cross section of the spinal cord, which is to the far right, the little purplish hue to it. The gray area is the darker area, as I mentioned. It's the butterfly. You may not think of it as a butterfly. Obviously, it's not a butterfly, but it has the general shape, especially if you look at the x-ray cross section on the far right. It just has that symmetrical look to it, with the two lobes in the top and the bottom. Just gives an overall, a general appearance of what one would see as a butterfly, with the wings coming together and the body in between. But that's the gray area, and of course the white surrounds the butterfly. And we'll talk about each of them in their own screen. Now, when we're thinking about the gray matter, and again, there's a lot there on the screen, so you do want to be sure to capture that, and I'll talk about the summary points and the particular points to highlight. But the gray area is the receiving and the sending areas out and from the sensory receptors. So somewhere on the body there's a message that needs to get to the brain. It enters the spinal cord through the gray matter, and that information is processed. And you saw on the previous screen that you should have written down that gray matter does not have much myelin. And when we've talked about myelin, let's think, have we gotten there yet? Yeah, I think we have mentioned that the myelin, well, if we haven't, this will be your spoiler alert. When you prepare them all ahead of time, you forget which is which. But anyway, it has little myelin, so therefore it's a slower processing than neurons with myelin. That's right, it would have been in the last chapter. So, not that it's slow, it's just slower, because it's processing information, deciding where it needs to go, what needs to happen, and then once it is processed in the gray area, then it moves on to the white area. But the gray area is the receiving and sending out to the sensory, as I mentioned. So if it comes from a sensory receptor, it enters the gray area, it's processed, and then it goes into the white area. If it's coming from the brain, it is in the white area, and then it enters the gray area, and then is sent out to wherever it needs to be sent out to. And something else to emphasize, say that your brain is sending a message to your arm, to your hand, to do something. Maybe you're writing and you're sending this information out. It's only going to go down the spinal cord to the appropriate level. So, for example, if it's a message to your hand, and we've seen that there's 31 pairs, and those pairs branch out. We talked about every centimeter and a half. Yeah, there's another pair of spinal nerves. So if it's a message to your hand, it'll only go down that far and then out to your hand. It doesn't travel the full length of the spinal cord where every nerve pair gets the information, only to the needed nerve pair. Now when it comes to the white matter is the elevator system. So if a message enters the gray area from, say, the skin on your leg, it enters the gray area, then it moves into the white area, and you can see there's a track system, and the track system is our next video that we'll be talking about. But it enters that track system. You can see the red is going up and the green is going down. So if the information comes from the skin on your leg, it'll enter the gray area, move out to the white area, and then based on where it's coming from, takes the appropriate track. There's also some tracks that are more used because they're more urgent. There are lesser tracks, but we'll talk about all that in the next video. But it moves up through the spinal cord on the ascending tracks, and then once the brain decides what needs to happen, it enters where the green areas are and descends down to the appropriate level, and then into the gray area, and then out to wherever it needs to go to. But the gray area is the sending and receiving, and the white area is the elevator system, moving it through the spinal cord up or down based on the need. Well, that's our video over gray and white matter. When we come back here next time, as I talked about, we'll be talking about the tracks of the spinal cord. We'll see you then.